As usual with me, it's not prayers, but a thought. This time of year is an important one for the Jewish community as we celebrate our Jewish New Year next week, and then 10 days later our Day of Atonement. It is a time both of celebration but also of reflection, this year possibly even more so. But we can't discount the individual reflection that is demanded as well. The process that we go through in acknowledging what we may have done wrong and also what we've done right and what we're proud of ourselves for as well. Resolving to change over the year. Actually going to the people, especially the people closest to us, to apologise for things that we truly are not proud of and that when we caused hurt. And finally, when we get to the end of the fast day, we hope that we will receive a sense of annulment, a time to go forward again. That can only be gifted by God and our sense that we might have of the divine. To truly approach this season, though, the one asset that we need is humility. It is truly to acknowledge both the limitations in ourselves, the limitations in others when we have expectations of them as well. It's one of those traits and characteristics which goes through time. And this evening I chose to advertise my father's book, because why wouldn't you, given an opportunity? A wonderful book of readings, not just for Jews. High and Holy Days, some thoughts approaching such a season. This thought around humility was written by Elimelech of Liszcz, an 18th century Hasidic ultra-Orthodox rabbi from Poland. And he wrote, "Guard me from vicious leanings and haughty ways, from anger and from temper, from melancholy, tale-bearing, and from all other evil qualities. Nor let envy of any person rise in my heart, nor envy of me in the arts of others. On the contrary, put in my heart that I may see my fellows' virtue and not their failings." This year I have done two things for the councillors here tonight who are members of my community. For one, I've allowed him to do what he always does, which is to stay outside and be on security, because as a Jew you don't have to be religious. If you do your security duty, that's good. And the other is to offer an honour so that I ensure that the other one does come in. They will hear the blowing of a shofar, a ram's horn that wakes ourselves up at this time of year. It's a ram's horn in this country and in Eastern and Central Europe, but for those Jews who come from Africa, it is whatever animals are more common to them. And so I was able to be gifted this by some Ethiopian Jews who gave me this at this moment in time. There are sacred tools that we all have. May we use them well.
Please be seated. Right, good evening everyone. Item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, councillors and colleagues. 2 apologies for absence, Councillor Ahmad Walana and Councillor Nelson West.
Thank you. Item 2, minutes. All agreed? Item 3, declarations of interest.
Madam Mayor, if I may, on behalf of Mr Ennis and myself, we will be declaring non-pecuniary interest in item 5, little 2, appointment of statutory officers.
Item 4, Mayor's announcements. Good evening. Here is a resume of the community events and civic services I've had the privilege to attend. I have visited care homes and was invited to be part of the celebrations for a resident's 100th birthday. I have attended summer fetes, local religious events, Hillingdon Chamber of Commerce summer barbecue, and an honorary Bachelor of Education graduation ceremony at Brunel University. I have visited Cranford Park, Family Fun Day, Summer Playday Child's Right to Play, and Kicker 2024. Schools, volunteers, and community groups have been welcomed to the Mayor's Parlour. I thoroughly enjoyed being part of the judging panel, along with Councillor Bianco, for the autumn show at the Great Barn. An amazing display of fruit, vegetables, flowers, artwork, and other home produce. I attended a summer concert listening to adults from Community Connects, singing songs from various show tunes. It was my pleasure also to support the Daniela Logan Foundation fundraising cake sale. I reported for duty at the Army Training Centre at Purbright to hear about the work of Army cadets northwest London and to get to meet some of the cadets on detachment in Uxbridge and watch the final parade and presentation at the end of their annual camp. I had the honour to raise a flag at the Civic Centre forecourt in recognition of the amazing work our emergency services carry out every day. I was honoured to lay a wreath at the commemorative ceremony at the Polish Air Force Memorial in Ruislip. It was great to meet veterans and service personnel at RAF Northolt and to witness a Spitfire flying ahead. I would like to share with you the plethora of talented young people we have in our borough, not just in music and the arts, but in track, field events, other disciplines, in creativity and other activities, and it has been my absolute pleasure to meet and engage with these young people. I would like to start with a quote by Barack Obama. He said, "The future belongs to young people with an education and the imagination to create." I spent an evening celebrating with members of the London Youth Games, from track to field events and to other disciplines. The young people were awarded certificates in recognition of their achievements, and the ever popular "I met the Mayor" sticker. I too got a sticker. At Botwell Sports Centre, I met with Hillingdon athletes who demonstrated their taekwondo and gymnastic skills. Also present was a young female weightlifter who won a silver medal at the Commonwealth Games in 2022. As a sports fan, it was a great pleasure to present end-of-season awards to the Colts at the Hayes Cricket Club. Thank you to Councillors Corr and Gaelic for supporting this event. It was indeed a treat to spend an evening watching the Danfee Badminton Society Knockout Championship and to award prizes to the winners. I met a 9-year-old who had participated in the Young Artist Summer show at the Royal Academy of Arts. His entry was a stop-motion short movie titled Godzilla vs. Hong Kong and was selected from over 21,500 applicants. As a result of this achievement, he has a meeting with Ridley Scott, the filmmaker. I visited the Guru Nanak Sikh Academy to celebrate the success of years 11 and 13 students. At my first visit to Project Search, I met a young girl who was on a work experience course in the maternity ward at Hillingdon Hospital. She told me how much she was enjoying the work and mentioned that was where she wanted to work. I was delighted to learn that she now has a job at St Mary's Hospital on the maternity ward. Project Search at the Marriott Hotel has been running for over 10 years. I attended a graduation ceremony at the Marriott Hotel, which has been offering students work experience in all areas of the hotel business, and certificates were awarded to this year's graduating interns. Some of the interns managed to secure jobs at the Marriott Hotel. The stage is yours. Round 1 and 2 are summer workshops, which are held at the Campus Theatre to help young people from 4 to 8 years old and 7 to 16s to gain confidence and develop their speech and presentation skills. It was lovely watching 4-year-olds performing the Rocky Horror Show, especially as one little youngster was one beat behind everyone else. It was a joy to watch. A fabulous fun evening watching the Beck Theatre's summer youth project Legally Blonde. Amazing talent on show, and they put the whole production together in just 12 days. A wonderful evening of entertainment by pupils at Breakspear School. The summer concert included orchestral pieces, pop music, show tunes, and an original rap piece. Amazing young talent. Finally, I would like to leave you with a Frank D. Roosevelt quote, who said, "We cannot always build the future for our youth, but we can build our youth for the future." Thank you. Item 5, report of the Head of Democratic Services. Councillor Edwards.
Madam Mayor, thank you very much. And if you will permit me, I'd like to make a statement on two matters, flooding and on Lebanon. Firstly, the flooding earlier in this week has hit our borough quite badly for us. I know that members will be as concerned as I am that Bourne Primary School remains closed as a result of the flooding, but council officers are assisting to the very best of our ability to provide recovery and open the school as speedily as possible. I believe members will be equally concerned to learn that up to 121 houses in Clifford Road in Ruislip Garden were impacted, many of them, if not all of them, with flood damage internal to the property. Assistance again has been given to those properties, and we will help clear once the relevant insurance inspections have taken place. I have asked officers, in fact I've instructed officers, to investigate both these instances urgently and to report back within a matter of a couple of weeks so that we can identify those causes and take remedial action. That will be in addition to a full investigation of the flooding across the borough required under Section 19 of the Flood Water Management Act, and I would ask all councillors to feed into that investigation. I understand that some new areas have experienced surface water flooding. I'm also aware that some of the areas that have been prone to surface water flooding in the past did not flood, and that is believed to be down to the success of recently installed flood alleviation measures. A final instruction has been given to our staff at the Civic Waste site, my apologies, to implement our rules with a very light touch with regards to water damaged items. And very speedily, if I may just mention Lebanon, with a government call for UK citizens to evacuate, our officers have met with Heathrow partners to ensure that we are prepared to support refugees on their arrival. I'll now turn, if I may please, to the report of the Head of Democratic Services. This report is in 4 parts. The first part is to note the urgent decisions recently taken, 2 relating to property acquisition and 1 a contractual matter. Sub-item 2 is in 3 recommendations: the appointment of statutory officers relating to the Section 151 officer and the monitoring officer, following a change in personnel. The first, I'd like to point out that we are very fortunate to secure the services of Mr. Ennis, a highly experienced officer in local government and finance, and he will be undertaking the role of the Section 151 officer on an interim basis with the agreement of council. Following that, it goes that Mr. Ennis should be granted the authority to exercise the delegated powers of the Corporate Director of Finance. And the third recommendation under sub-item 2 is to appoint Lloyd White as the interim monitoring officer upon Glenn Egan's departure and whilst his replacement is being recruited. Sub-item 3 concerns the electoral count arrangements, and this is 2 recommendations. The first one is to review the general election count and to identify systems improvements to design out of scope errors that may be made. And the second one is to move the count in the local elections to the following morning. I believe it is time for us to put staff welfare and the accuracy of the count before candidates' excitement at the count of a local election. By moving to the following morning, not only are less counting errors likely to be made, but our staff will be subject to less tiredness and less risk to health, with many having to work 20 or more hours in a working day under the present arrangements. The final recommendations under bullet point 4, 2 recommendations. The first is to increase the special responsibility allowance for the chair of the audit committee to ensure the post is attractive to the best candidates. And the second one is to pay an SRA to the chair of the pensions committee. It was very recently brought to my notice that we are one of a very small minority of councils not paying the SRA for this post, and all of our immediate neighbours do. I know that there is a burden to this work, and that should be recognised, and I am therefore recommending we correct this long-standing oversight and set the allowance at the same rate as the chair for the audit committee. Madam Mayor, I move all 7 recommendations in block. Thank you.
Seconded.
Madam Mayor, I second and reserve my right.
Thank you. Councillor Mathers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to speak on the employment of interims into the statutory required roles. The Labour Group understands that this is essential and necessary, that these roles need to be covered at all times, and on occasions there may be need to also recruit consultants. However, I'd ask that the administration, when bringing these items for approval to full council, provide a time frame in which the role can be reviewed and brought back to council. By this I mean limiting interim roles potentially to 12 to 18 months before having them to return to full council. It is prudent and appropriate to recruit to permanent positions in statutory roles, and so this would help council to understand the plans that the administration may have. I also want to extend the welcome to the new Section 151 officer. I, like so many, do not envy the task that he has in this role, following the political decisions made by the Conservative administration and the ones they continue to make. Political decisions that have negatively impacted residents and put council services at risk. This administration's hand in the financial decisions, the ones they make, diminishes investments in our communities. It puts the future of things such as the Beck at risk. It closes cafes. It cuts children's nurseries and early years centres. It exhausts bowling club members by cutting green spaces. There is a budget and they need to sell off 75 million in reserves. Madam Mayor, stability in our senior management is needed more than ever, and I hope these appointments are part of a plan to achieve some stability in a chaotic Conservative administration.
Thank you. Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And firstly, I would like to echo the comments made by Councillor Edwards, in that we are indeed very fortunate indeed to have the services of Mr. Richard Ennis in the role of Section 151 officer. I would like to make absolutely clear that we in this authority are in a stable financial position. We have challenges. It is clear we have challenges, and we are not alone in having those challenges. Indeed, it is my understanding that at least 3 authorities in the London area are already benefiting from exceptional financial measures. My belief is that there are at least another 7 which are in the queue to secure those. We are not in that position. Bankruptcy, Section 114, is not going to happen here. That is not just my opinion. That is also Mr. Ennis's opinion. Okay, there is stability, there is strength, and contrary to what Councillor Mathers might wish to believe, we continue to maintain vital services to our residents. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? Okay. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and I will unusually speak again. Yes, the information you requested can very easily be given, and that could be done without having to make such a political speech. But as you have made the political speech, let me just say that many authorities, as you know, across the country, are facing bankruptcy, and I dare say the next through that will be to the government's door will be red, not blue. And I also wish to add that I fear very much what is going to come at the very soon budget. And I dare say that that will not be to the advantage of local authorities either.
Are the recommendations agreed? Thank you. Item 6, members' questions. Councillor McMahon. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What action has the Council taken to safeguard residents from the harm caused by the recent incidents of traffic light destruction?
Councillor Levy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor McQuarrie, for your question. I'm sure that all members present will share your concern about the reckless vandalism of traffic signals maintained, as you know, and entirely owned and managed by Transport for London. Members would not be aware that the Leader of the Council and the Deputy Leader of the Council recently met with the Commissioner of TfL and a number of the senior officers of TfL, and the subject of Uly's related vandalism was top of both parties' agendas. We made clear that we are very concerned about the serious road safety implications of the destruction of traffic signals in our borough, and in some cases the time taken to repair the equipment. And I'm pleased to report there was very much a meeting of minds around the table. We, of course, were disappointed that the Mayor of London was unable to overcome the strong opposition, or was able to overcome the strong opposition of Hillingdon residents to his stealth tax, revenue raising ULEZ into outer London. But this does not mean that in any way we condone the subsequent wanton vandalism of equipment on our highways. As a direct result of the meeting with the TfL Commissioner and his officers and their counterparts within the Council were tasked with working jointly together to bring together the resources of both organisations alongside colleagues in the police in order that this matter can be brought to a close. They have been meeting regularly and have agreed a number of steps and active responses to this vandalism. I hope everyone will join me in welcoming the Council's proactive initiative, but also respecting the need for me to maintain confidentiality at this time. As soon as we have any more information, we will be happy to share it. Thank you.
Is there a supplementary question?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Question 6.1. Councillor Burles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Regarding access to the new Uxbridge Library, the main ramp to the reception and the ramp to the Middlesex Suite are long and steep, so it is likely that the manual wheelchair users will try to use the shorter ramp leading to the lift. We have been informed that the internal dimensions of the lift to the library do not meet the minimum requirement for wheelchairs. Can the Cabinet Member please assure us that all wheelchair users will be able to use the lift and the library?
Councillor Levy.
Thank you, Councillor Burles, for your question. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm delighted you continue to take an active interest in the exciting new Uxbridge Library project, and long may that continue. I'm pleased to confirm to Council that the lift you reference is DDA compliant. Madam Mayor, a simple ME or contact via me could have obtained the same answer. Thank you.
Is there a supplementary question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, at the planning meeting in July, it came out that the lift did not meet the minimum requirements. So I don't know. I don't know how it meets the DDA requirements when it was clear at the planning meeting that it didn't meet it. So I thank the Cabinet Member for his reply. I would say I thank the Cabinet Member for his reply.
Thank you. Item 6.3, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It has taken Danny Bills, MP for Uxbridge and South Ruislip, less than 3 months to break his election pledge to put money into the pockets of local people. With his support, the government has cut the winter fuel allowance to pensioners whilst agreeing inflation-busting pay rises for their union friends. and therefore many of our older residents must now be fearful of the coming winter. What steps might the Council take to mitigate the harm that has been widely predicted will be caused by this callous and ill-thought-out change?
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Martin, for the question. And it is profoundly disappointing that the Labour Member of Parliament for Uxbridge and South Ruislip put his party before his constituents and voted to support the removal of the winter fuel allowance from nearly 13,000 pensioners in this borough. I'm sure the Council is aware that David Simmons and John McDonnell both voted against the government, and that only yesterday the Labour Party conference also voted against the change. The harms that this will cause to millions of pensioners is obvious to all, it seems, but the vast majority of Labour MPs. Let me assure our elderly residents, who are beneficiaries of our now closed older people's discount scheme, that we will not add to their financial worries by seeking to recover that discount, now or in the future, which is in stark contrast with the Labour group who moved a motion to do just that in the budget proposal last year. Regrettably, the Council is not in a position to mitigate entirely the harms of this means testing of the winter fuel allowance, but there are 3 ways that we are going to help. Firstly, we will be using some of the £2 million extension of the Household Support Fund confirmed on Tuesday to commission a local charity or other third party to reach out to all of our pensioners and to assist those that may be entitled to pension credit to submit a claim. This is in fact quite a daunting process, structured primarily for online entry, which is not ideal for older people. And it is surprising that the easy read guidance document is 20 pages long. The application form is 24 pages long, requiring 243 data fields to be completed. It is no surprise that many older people are put off. Pensioners need assistance, may need assistance to navigate this system, and the aim is to provide that support alongside them in their homes. The second way we can help is to prioritise our pensioner tenants for energy efficiency improvements that we have planned for our housing stock. Officers have been instructed to identify the energy performance rating of all our properties with older tenants and to prioritise all those with energy performance certificate of D and below for our programme for new boilers, new double glazing and improved insulation. By making homes more energy efficient, we will permanently lower their energy bills, in some instances by way more than their lost winter fuel allowance. And finally, I've asked officers to use a further part of the Household Support Fund to create a pensioner support fund to help those in modest incomes to stay warm this winter. Details of this will be advised in due course. Thank you.
Is there a supplementary question, Councillor Martin?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Sweeting?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could the Cabinet member provide an update on the recent Hillingdon, Ofsted and Care Quality Commission area SEND inspection of the 29th of April to the 3rd of May 2024 and the subsequent Ofsted report which stated that, quote, overall, children, young people and their families have varied experience, and that, I quote, the local area's approach to quality assuring education, health and care plans and annual reviews is not robust.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien?
I thank Councillor Sweeting for her question. As always, they're always very useful. The local area SEND inspection quite rightly took place in April 2024, 4 months after finalising the SEND and alternative provision 5-year strategy. Through the development of this strategy and through analysis of our data, we recognise the need for improvements across various elements of the system related to SEND and AP. The areas identified by Ofsted and the CQC were already acknowledged by our leaders and were detailed within the strategy itself. Inspectors noted, quote, leaders have made many improvements, unquote, and highlighted numerous strengths within the local area, including, quote, leaders across the partnership are highly ambitious. They work collaboratively with a range of stakeholders, including children and young people, to inform their work. This includes the creation of the 2023 to 2028 5-year SEND and alternative provision strategy and their approach to joint commissioning. Much of the partnership's improvement work is well underway, but too early to see the sustained impact of some strategies, unquote. That's on page 3 of the report. We acknowledge that the Equality of Education, Health and Care Plan, EHCPs, required not only a new approach, but improvements, and Ofsted and the CQC recognise that by commenting that, quote, more recent plans are of better quality, unquote. Following our initial efforts, over the past 6 months, between January to June 2024, there were a total of 947 requests for the SEND service. The SEND service and the local area partnership encompasses a number of services and organisations, including the local authority education and social care teams, as well as our NHS health partners through the ICB, the Integrated Care Board, the Parent Carer Forum, as well as schools. In March of this year, the local authority and ICB jointly funded a cross-agencies leaders challenge to understand systems, practice, thinking and improving our partnerships at the strategic level, and we will continue to strive towards further improving these plans as outlined in the strategy, specifically under ambition number 1, the right support at the right time in the right place. The report is correct in stating that overall children and young people and their families have a varied experience. Hillingdon has almost 3,500 children and young people with an educational healthcare plan that in the main will all have input from all of the organisations that I've just read out, and we will continue to endeavour to get it right first time, but there will be times when plans or complex situations will change the family's experience and expectations of the service. Officers also identified a backlog of annual reviews that needed attention and initiated a project well before the SEND inspection took place to address this issue. The goal is to ensure that annual reviews improve in both timeliness and quality. The local area continues to collaborate with partners to enhance all aspects of annual reviews, ensuring they provide high-quality assessments of children's needs and outcomes. It was positive to read in the report that, quote, more children and young people now stay in Hillingdon for their education. Leaders have successfully worked with schools and multi-academy trusts to expand the number of places available in special schools, resource provisions, designated units. Parents and carers speak highly of the quality of specialist education in the local area, unquote. And whilst we know that some parents commented that their children are not as well supported in mainstream schools, leaders know this and are working with schools as part of their improvement work to develop more inclusive approaches. Notwithstanding Councillor Sweeting highlighting 2 issues that we have been working on, we are pleased that the outcome of the Ofsted inspection reinforces the areas identified by our partnerships and confirms that the strategy we developed is appropriate and effectively addresses the weaknesses previously identified by our leaders. We remain committed to working with our schools, health services and other partners to further improve outcomes for children and young people with SEND. The partnership is currently in the process of creating an improvement plan, which will be published, to outline how we intend to address the areas of development highlighted in the Ofsted and QCQ inspection report and how we will measure progress. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Sweeting.
Is there a supplementary question? Councillor Sweeting.
Yes, thank you very much. Why has it taken an inspection by Ofsted and the Care Quality Commission to bring light to all regarding significant failures in our SEND local air partnership to the notice of the Council and others. Failures such as, and I quote, education, health and care plans being no longer meaningful or useful. Shortfalls in information sharing, varied and inconsistent outcomes, and which has necessitated the Minister for Education, Janet Darby MP, writing to the Leader of the Council and others on the 6th of August, directing the Council to take, and I quote, determined action to those areas in need of improvement, and to put in place...
Point of order, please. Can we have the question? Thank you. I look forward to it.
It is a question. Thank you very much, Cabinet Member. I continue. And to put in place an update of its local area partnership SEND strategic plan within 35 working days, which will have, and I quote, sufficient detail for monitoring purposes, end quote.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, for allowing me the opportunity to respond to your supplementary question, the supplementary question of Councillor Sweeting. Interesting to know where the question was. It was very, very long. Thank you for the clap as well, because clearly you don't appreciate the whole answer that I gave you, where the majority of that was answered. However, if you want to write that question and send it to me, I'll try and answer it fully. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Member.
Thank you. Go straight to motions. Item 7, Councillor Farley.
Point of order,
sorry.
Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, your passion for the arts and culture is well known. The public debacle of the negotiations...
Madam Mayor, which point of order in the Constitution is this under?
It's alarming.
You need to be a standing order under a certain point.
An emergency motion, with your permission, which I have...
Madam Mayor, if I could just... The member has raised a point of order. Obviously, he needs to be able to say what point of order that is, but I believe that's presumably what you were about to do.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
So you need to state the point of order that you're making rather than making a statement.
Within the provision of motions without notice, we'd ask for an emergency motion that acknowledges the Council should regret the communication with Trafalgar Group and should work. I have it here. We're very happy to debate it. No.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, that's not the motion without notice. The motions without notice are strictly set out in the Constitution.
Madam Mayor, would you be willing to permit this motion to be heard?
Hang on a second. No.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, just to clarify, there is no provision for a motion without notice that would be a motion submitted under notice. The motions without notice are very clearly set out in the Constitution, and that you cannot bring a motion that should have been submitted with notice.
A statement was permitted earlier which wasn't given notice of. I wonder if we could then...
Although that, Madam Mayor, if I may again, although it's not specifically set in the Constitution, it's a tradition within this Council that if the leader is to make a statement that is non-political about an issue that affects the whole borough, such as, if I may highlight, the previous leader making COVID statement all the way through COVID, and this leader making a non-political statement about flooding which has affected the whole borough. What you're trying to do is bring a motion that should have been submitted with notice by midday last Tuesday. The notices without motion are quite clearly set out in Standing Order 13. Bringing a motion like that is not within the terms of the Constitution. I would advise Madam Mayor not to accept it.
As this came after the date... Madam Mayor, I was just asking, as this came after the date...
Sorry, can you sit down, Councillor Mathers? We're not going to do that. Thank you. Right, back to item 7, Councillor Farley.
Madam Mayor, point of order. They're hoggling. Can you speak to them, please?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, but Councillor Farley hadn't started speaking yet. I'm sure members will give due accord when he does.
Councillor Farley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, I wish to give a huge thank you to our Waste Services and Green Spaces teams tonight. Our Waste Services teams are hugely dedicated to keeping our borough clean despite the obscene behaviour by some residents and others that travel into and through our borough. And thanks also go to our Green Spaces teams who do all they can to maintain our open spaces and verges despite the difficult positions they find themselves in. However, during the summer, numerous residents have called my attention to an issue that both infuriates and worries them. That being grass cutting, churning up litter, including metal cans, glass bottles and containers, razor blades, and other items that break apart and spread over our open spaces. These then become a danger for all, notably children, family pets, and our beautiful wildlife, and they cannot enjoy our borough's open spaces as they should be able to. Then there is the cost and expense of repair damage to machinery, as blades and cutting equipment churns up metal, glass and fabric. What the motion before Council tonight asks is that the Cabinet member seeks to ensure that, as a matter of course, plans are set out, weather and other situations permitting, to coordinate green spaces grass cutting with litter picks. I hope that this is an issue we can agree upon across the Chamber, and I ask members for their support this evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Seconded. Councillor Gardner.
Can you hear me? Because I understand there's a problem with the microphones on this side. Right, Madam Mayor, and secondly this, can I first say, for the avoidance of doubt, nobody sponsors what I wear, and sadly I don't have a personal photographer. Right. Secondly, the amendment from the Conservative group means absolutely nothing apart from a rear-covering exercise and avoiding the content of the motions. Of the motion. It's a huge shame that different departments within the council are unable to communicate with each other via their cabinet member. Maybe it's like some cabinet members who sometimes seem very, very confused about the crossovers on each other's responsibilities. So here's a very friendly suggestion to you, Councillor Lavery, who is the cabinet member for both departments related to this motion. I understand from my extensive grapevine that you've got a huge portfolio, which I am sure on some occasions you have trouble juggling. If you could stop... There's some very rather rude people over there. It's not a carry-on film. If you could stop juggling for a minute and look in the mirror and then talk to yourself about the issues mentioned in the motion and come up with a cunning plan which will both please the residents who continually complain to us about the issues of shredded litter and the impact it has on the environment, and of course all of us who are rightfully concerned about the biodiversity in the borough. Thank you and good night.
Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I rise to move the amendment that is in my name on the order paper. Grass verges across the borough are cut every 3 to 4 weeks between the months of March and October, with the exception of some of the rural verges which are cut once a year to encourage the growth of wild grasses and attract pollinating insects. Although a robust cutting programme has been established, it is not possible to provide precise dates of these works in advance due to a high number of variables, including our weather. The street cleansing service largely operates through precisely programmed works with optimal resource availability to carry out daily sweeping of shop fronts, town centres, and then mini sweeper visits and fortnightly litter picking visits on all residential roads. A number of reactive crews are available to respond to service requests, including fly tipping. The inherent differences in operational requirements and need for flexibility in response to the varying conditions make simultaneous grass cutting and litter picking a challenging task. However, as Councillor Gardner has pointed out, as I have both services within my portfolio, we are constantly looking at ways to achieve a closer alignment of our services and ensure operations are delivered in the most efficient way possible. And I have already asked officers to review how this work might be better scheduled in the future. Thank you.
Councillor Bianco.
Madam Mayor, I reserve my right. I second the motion, the amendment even. I second the amendment and I reserve my right to speak at the end.
Madam Mayor, just for the clarity of members and those present, we are now debating the amendment which is set out on the top of page 4, and the amended motion is in the middle of page 4. And Councillor Burles.
Councillor Burles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to briefly speak in support of the original motion. I think that it should be placed, and against the amendment, I think it should be placed on a public record, the amazing work done by Hillingdon litter pickers. They work in all weathers, rain or shine, to keep on top of this issue, quite often after the grass cutting has been done. Thank you for the job that you do to the borough. It is a much tidier place for it.
Councillor Islam.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My speaking against the amendments. The Conservative amendment referred to wider matter of climate changes, biodiversity, and rewilding. These are matters that involve us all, but how progress can be made in these areas is not just a matter of policy, but also of detail in implementation. One example of this is the current gap is coordination between our waste services and green spaces management. It has come to our attention that litter is often left uncollected before our green spaces are scheduled to be maintained. This is not only undermine the efforts to keep our community, but also diminishes aesthetic value of our public areas. Madam Mayor, when litter is left on the grass and then cut, it is shredded into the smaller pieces, making it more difficult, time-consuming to clean up. This is not only affect the visual appeal of our green spaces, but also propose environment and the health risks. The shredded litter can be harmful to wildlife, and the accumulation of waste can attract pests and create unsanitary. Madam Mayor, this amendment is not fit for purpose, and it does not, I repeat, does this address very reasonable concern of many of residents who have contacted me to report shredded litter being left by Hillingdon Council. So how does this amendment address this concern? It doesn't, madam. So therefore, I urge all the council members, please support the Labour original motion, not the amendment. Thank you, madam.
Thank you. Councillor Punja.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, speaking against the amendment. As chair of a global land restoration charity with extensive knowledge on rewilding and biodiversity, I challenge this amendment attributed to the Council's climate change commitment. The Council is using language like rewilding and biodiversity as an opportunity to cut back services rather than ensure our wildlife has the best possible chance to flourish. True rewilding approaches require robust rewilding management plans, which I have not seen come from this Council. It cannot merely be a consequence of reduction of grass cutting. True biodiversity commitments need a monitoring plan so that the Council can evaluate whether biodiversity has improved through its measures. I cannot see this. Furthermore, by leaving litter whilst mowing verges and parks, we are harming our wildlife and decreasing biodiversity. This amendment demonstrates and exposes the Council's lack of understanding on the climate agenda through rewilding and biodiversity. Thank you.
Councillor Sweeting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I speak against the amendment. Well, what a watered-down amendment we have before us this evening, Madam Mayor. So different from the Labour motion as to be almost unrecognisable. It's as if the administration wants to totally ignore the very reasonable concerns of our residents who have asked us about the confetti-type waste spread over their pavements and grassed areas, just because there is absolutely no coordination between team cutting and team waste. So what is the reason why the original Labour motion has been so battered into submission and diluted that it is hardly recognisable? Well, we all probably have a sneaky idea about that, don't we? So let me put in words that which our residents will be thinking as they watch and listen to us tonight. It's so this Council, in effect, will do absolutely nothing to address this real concern, which so many of our residents have been complaining about. So, in effect, by this amendment, confetti will continue to rule in Hillingdon. Okay.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Bianco.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't intend to say much because I'm sure the mover of the amendment will have more to say than I do. However, it was good to see that at least both sides agreed on one aspect of this amendment, which is, and indeed the original motion, which is that congratulations should be sent to our Green Spaces and Waste Services teams for the excellent service they do in all weathers throughout the year. And if one looks at this summer as an example, where we've had endless bouts of rain at different times, making grass cutting particularly an extremely difficult task to achieve, it is understandable why we don't always manage to coordinate litter picking and grass cutting together. Madam Mayor, I support this amendment.
Councillor Farley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First thing to say is I'm glad that the Cabinet member recognises that there is an issue of synchronisation. This administration only seems to amend motions when they agree with a motion but don't want to admit it. So they amend and twist to obfuscate in front of our residents. So rather than addressing an issue that has been raised by Hillingdon residents head-on, this Cabinet chooses to grandstand, move an amendment to draw attention to a dubious record and remove all reference to the entire point of the original motion of coordinating litter picks with grass cutting. Instead, flowery, ambiguous language has been moved in this amendment to replace an explicit request on behalf of residents. How is leaving dangerous litter to be churned up helping rewilding, biodiversity and our wildlife? To claim this is a good record of this Cabinet is laughable. Why is this important? Madam Mayor, this issue is important because this is something raised consistently with me over the summer and is of real concern to our residents. To illustrate, I refer to a sample of messages I have received from West Drayton residents over the summer. From one resident, I was disappointed about bottles, razors, etc. left on the dell not being cleared as they have been broken up by lawnmowers, and I walk my dog there daily and it is dangerous. Another resident said, the council is still cutting up litter when they mow the grass on Harmondsworth Road. Another, rubbish is getting chewed up by the lawnmowers. If the rubbish on grassy areas was collected daily, it won't be there when the mowers come. Another, Madam Mayor, I saw a mower drive over a dumped rug. It churned up in the blades and they spent over an hour trying to untangle it. Another, I walked home today and there were bottles, plastics and glass, shredded tin cans, plastic bottles and other rubbish all over the grass areas. The rubbish doesn't appear to have been picked up. The majority has just been mown over. Finally, one more, Madam Mayor. The public bins regularly overflow. Then someone from the council comes along to cut the grass and the litter is cut up and strewn over big green spaces. Madam Mayor, besides this sample of testimony from West Drayton residents, I have also queried this on different occasions with council officers, and it has been confirmed to me that the communication and scheduling between the two departments is less than efficient. I know other members in this chamber will have heard similar from the residents they represent. I end by saying that it is such a shame that this chamber will not agree to a simple ask on behalf of Hillingdon residents. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will make one final comment in closing. I note the number of Labour speakers. Unfortunately, the number of Labour speakers exceeds the number of MEs that have been received on this subject this year. And I leave it at that, Madam Mayor.
Those in favour of the amendment? Right, motion carried. Sorry? Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. Against.
Madam Mayor, that amendment is carried. That becomes a substantive motion as set out in the middle of page 4. We just need to agree that, if that's agreed.
Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Councillor Punja, a motion from you, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, on 14th of June 2017, a high-rise fire broke out in the 24-storey Grenfell Tower blocks of a flats in North Kensington, West London at 12:55 a.m. and burned for 60 hours. 70 people died at the scene and 2 people died later in hospital, with more than 70 injured and 223 escaping. Madam Mayor, the Grenfell Tower Inquiry Report condemned unscrupulous manufacturers, a cost-cutting council and reckless deregulations for the disaster in Britain's worst residential fire since World War II. On 4th of September 2024, in the Local Government's Chronicle, Councillor Elizabeth Campbell, leader of the Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, said the inquiry shows beyond doubt that this council failed the residents of Grenfell Tower and 72 people, including 18 children, who died. She said, "We fully accept the findings, which are withering critique of a system broken from top to bottom. It is crystal clear profits were put before people, clear warning signs were ignored, and Grenfell was wholly avoidable, with failure at every single level." Madam Mayor, I understand under the leadership of Sir Ray Puddifoot, Hillingdon Council ensured that all council-owned buildings were fire safe. However, this for me does not go far enough. We have many residential buildings in our borough which are owned by private developers and managed by private companies. We house council tenants in these buildings. Furthermore, residents of our borough have bought into or are rental tenants in these buildings. This motion aims to ensure that all residential buildings are made fire safe. This motion aims to ensure that the council has a full list of our residential buildings that need remediation so that the council can urge managing agents and developers to speedily remediate these buildings. This motion enables full monitoring of the remediation process of those buildings. Because, Madam Mayor, if any of these buildings should be subject to a fire, it will be the council's responsibility to provide temporary accommodation for them. The Fire Brigade asks councils to ensure interim emergency evacuation procedures have been put in place until these buildings are fire safe, and that an increased predetermined attendance is in place until these buildings are fire safe. Madam Mayor, we will be accepting the Conservative Group's amendments on this motion, as it is not the political points that matter here, but people's lives. Thank you.
Seconded.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Grenfell Tower fire stands as the most devastating tragedy that hit the UK since the Second World War. Grenfell Tower, an apartment building, caught fire and burned for more than 60 hours, claiming 72 lives and leaving over 200 people homeless. The scale of the disaster was largely due to use of cheap, substandard materials during the building's constructions and refurbishments, including the installation of aluminium composite cladding. This cladding ignited like a matchstick, accelerating the blaze. Shockingly, the same type of cladding used on Grenfell Tower remains on hundreds of high-rise and public buildings across Britain, including some in Hillingdon. These buildings are primarily home to low-income families who are in thousands. Imagine tucking your children into bed in one of those buildings, just hoping that disaster won't strike. It's also important to acknowledge Boris Johnson, in his time as the Mayor of London, faced heavy criticism for slashing the fire service budget by closing 10 fire stations and removing 72 fire engines. When confronted, Johnson's, I quote, said, because we are improving fire cover, as I said several times, unquote. When pressed for further on how, he responded, quote, by continuing to reduce the deaths from fire and continuing to reduce the incidence of fire. That's the name of the game, unquote. Fast forward, on the 14th of June 2027, the date that we will never forget was the Grenfell disaster. Corporate greed shattered the lives of 72 people in that tower, 18 of them young, innocent children, all of whom had dreams. This council is accountable for ensuring the safety of both buildings and their occupants. There are fundamental duties of care that must be upheld. The construction industry must reform its practices and change its approach. Finally, it's a question, Madam Mayor. Do we have any reports or recommendations for Hillingdon from the local authorities' building control department following the Grenfell disaster? And thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry to seem pedantic, Councillor Abbey, but you never actually seconded the motion. Could you just confirm that's what you're doing?
Sorry, thank you. I second the motion.
Thank you.
Councillor Bianco? Yeah? Yeah.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. I rise this evening to move what I now understand is accepted as a friendly amendment. I am sure that I speak for everyone on this side of the chamber, and if not the whole chamber, and certainly the whole borough, when I say that our hearts go out to all those caught up in this tragedy. And I share the determination already expressed to remove, if possible, the likelihood of an event like Grenfell happening again. Madam Mayor, it's my intention in the time available to me, which is only short, in moving this amendment, to set out what we've already done to address the issues we have found in our own buildings, and I know that Councillor Lavery will address the actions we have taken and are continuing to take in respect of those buildings not owned by the Council. I am pleased to say that immediately following Grenfell, swift action was taken by this Council to ensure the safety of our tenants, instigating a comprehensive fire safety improvement programme in all Council-owned high-rise blocks. This immediate action, not waiting for any investigations of the fire to be concluded, was thanks in large part to the direction given by the then leader, Sir Ray Puddifer, who made sure that funds were immediately available to undertake this vital work. Evidence of the success of that initiative is that recently all the high-rise buildings owned by the Council have now been evaluated and classified as low risk on the government's assessment portal. This classification follows the implementation of various safety upgrades, including the immediate installation of sprinkler systems in our 6 high-rise blocks. Additionally, we have installed new door sets throughout, and these doors meet Hillingdon's Council's higher specifications, which mandated full third-party certification, complete door set testing, and primary test evidence. Furthermore, we have conducted extensive electrical safety improvements, replacing consumer units with fire-rated units, installing smoke and heat detectors, and implementing new intelligent communal emergency lighting systems. Wayfinding signage has been installed, as well as other essential items. A recent review conducted by the Housing Quality Network highlighted Hillingdon's approach to fire safety as among the best in comparison to other areas of London. Madam Mayor, we have not been complacent in our actions to date, and we fully accept that the actions we have taken do not guarantee a trouble-free future. But we do believe that we have taken the right steps ahead of most of our neighbours. There is more to do, particularly in the private sector, as Councillor Lavery will set out when he speaks. I move this amendment.
Seconded.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I formally second the amendment and reserve my right to speak at the end.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Kaur.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No story, no parable, no quote, no research, no stats today. I stand to share the lived experience of the residents of the tower blocks in my ward. I sincerely believe that if policies are to really work for people they are meant for, it is essential to listen to their feedback too. An elderly resident says, and I quote, "The rough sleepers and druggies all use lighters. They sleep on cardboards and clothes taken from charity bins. They smoke and fall asleep with a cigarette in shed areas and stairs, and in the event of fire with thick smoke, our only escape is the stairs. We won't be able to see them. Also, the banisters to all the stairs are wood. I don't know what temperature the sprinklers go off. Our front door are never inspected to check the safety of the seals. There is so much that's wrong, I can't write it all." Another lady from a different block says, "One issue I would like to be addressed is tenants smoking on balcony. I have on a daily basis cigarettes that are still lighting fly into my balcony. I have clothes drying on my balcony and door opens for fresh air. It's very dangerous." A young mum from the same block says, "There are concerns about fire safety in the block. Residents are not clear on what causes the water sprinklers to go off. 2 weeks ago, the water sprinkler went off next door because they were removing their wallpaper with a steam device. The water sprinklers at Harding House are not suitable for tower block as water escapes to the flats below. The water is not contained within the flat that the sprinkler goes off in. It spreads to the floors below and pours out to the lighting and lifts. This is extremely dangerous. There are residents at the block with mobility issues that are living on the 10th floor and above. They are not aware what to do in the event of fire as they cannot go down the stairs. The council needs to do an audit check to see if they are safe to be living there. Wherever the fire services come to address the issue with the water sprinklers going off, they are unaware of how to turn them off. I had them knocking on my door 2 weeks ago to ask me because I had the same issue in April. The communal areas that are not covered by water sprinklers, what happens if a fire goes off in the sheds, for example? Something needs to be done to ensure that water sprinklers are managed and maintained properly. Another resident says, although fire doors were fitted to each flat, they have never been inspected regularly like the fire doors are supposed to be. The fire brigade cannot rescue anyone from the 6th floor upwards from the outside of the building. They don't have ladders or cherry pickers that go high enough, so their only means of rescuing is through the internal stairwell. I hope all these concerns feed into the fire safety planning of the council and private buildings of the borough so that no single life is ever put at risk. Thank you.
Councillor Edwards.
Madam Mayor, none of these are points of order. This is just a challenge on your own chairing of the meeting. The Chief Whip of the Opposition is basically criticising your chairing of the meeting. I think we're fine with how you're doing the job.
I raise a point of order because the other side were speaking when the speaker was speaking. I'm just asking that they show respect to the speakers.
Yeah, thank you. Can you please, if you've got a question, can you raise your hand and ask the chair? So can you sort of not chat amongst yourselves, which Councillor Nelson is alluding to. Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I wasn't intended to speak, but I do wish to pick up on the matters that were put forward there in your speech. They amount to quite serious matters. I'd very much hope that they have been reported. If you will give me the report numbers, I will ensure they're properly investigated and followed through. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? No? Councillor Raveley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With regard to private sector housing, we are required under the Housing Act 2004 to investigate, inspect, where necessary, take enforcement action to rectify fire safety in these buildings. The requirements have been extended under the Building Safety Act 2022. Officers have identified 56 high-rise blocks in the borough, 12 are hotels, 4 are owned by social landlords. There are 39 privately owned high-rise developments. These have been subject to a risk prioritisation process and ranked accordingly, prioritisation being based on height, the combustibility of external walls and other information held about the property. Significant work has been carried out on this programme, including successful prosecution of managing agent and formal and informal actions against high priority developments. 3 blocks originally classified as medium risk have been fully investigated and the case is closed. The inspection programme is ongoing and will take some time. But as mentioned earlier, the work of London Borough of Hillingdon has been recognised as amongst the best in London. Furthermore, as Councillor Punja is aware, the Select Committee receive an annual building safety update post-Grenville. Previously, the former Property Select Committee, and now the recipient of this will be the committee identified by Councillor Punja, the Corporate Resources and Infrastructure. This work is already on their programme for next year. So to put simply, regular monitoring of building safety of high-rises has been part and parcel of scrutiny for a number of years. The leader has already picked up on the comments made by Councillor Corr, and if there is residents who are uncertain about arrangements, please do let us have those details, because vulnerable residents should, from their tenancy management officers in our blocks, be aware of the processes, and we should have ensured that all of that has been done. So if it hasn't, please let us have the exact details and we will work on that. In respect of the sprinklers and fire doors, we are not actually obliged to have sprinklers in all our blocks, but we do, and we are confident those arrangements should work appropriately. But if there are residents that are not, we do need that information, please. Thank you.
Councillor Punja.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Edwards for taking these matters seriously in what Councillor Core has said, because they are, you know, real people having real lives, and I thank you for that. I'm delighted to hear that there is some sort of list somewhere. Then some of this work has already been done, but actually what has happened here is that it's not accessible, because I couldn't find these lists and I couldn't find where it was going on. And as residents, we should have these kind of accessibilities, or as councillors, we should be able to go in. And when I asked for this in an ME, it wasn't forthcoming. What is really interesting to know here is that you've got prioritisations becoming on height, but we don't know what those prioritisations are. So if there was reporting around this area in these monitoring reports, then councillors would know what is being looked at, what the needs are, and how far down the remediation process these buildings are in. It is worthwhile because many of those buildings will be in our boroughs and in our wards rather. So therefore, as we are being approached by residents, it is important for us to be able to give this information, because it is the ultimate duty of this council to ensure the safety of its residents. Thank you.
Councillor Bianco.
Madam Mayor, I think there's a general consensus in the room about what has been said tonight. I think if there are issues around availability of information, I'm surprised. I would expect it to have either been on the website or alternatively available at the by making a suitable ME. And if that hasn't happened, then I would suggest that the council should take it up with them services to see why they haven't had the answer they expect. Thank you.
Yeah. Vote. Could we have a vote for the amendment? Who's against?
Mayor, that amendment is carried. That becomes a substantive motion, which is set out on page 5, which just needs formal approval. If you could ask for that.
Okay. Approved. Agreed.
Madam Mayor, before we close the meeting, members of the Council, the Mayor has asked me to just clarify what constitutes a point of order. Point of order has been used several times tonight. It's in the Constitution at 14.12. A member may raise a point of order at any time, and the Mayor will hear you immediately, but please raise the point of order and then wait for the Mayor to call you. A point of order may only relate to an alleged breach of the Council rules of procedure or the law, and the member must indicate which rule or law has been broken, and then the ruling of the Mayor will be final. It is not to raise a notice without motion. It is not to say that the other side is speaking, because there is no rule in the Constitution that covers members speaking while other members are speaking. It's for the Mayor to chair the meeting and to maintain good order. So those are not point of orders.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.